Friends, a fun topic today. Could it be that the sports card market ends up overcorrecting? Let's talk about it. Stick around. Hello to all my sports card collectors, investors, all of my collectibles friends. How are we doing? It is another day. It is another sports card collectibles video. We are back again. If you're new here and you're looking for pretty much daily sports card content covering all sorts of sports card related topics, whether it's business or specific sets or specific cards or pricing or whatever, you have come to the right place. Please hit the big red button down below along with the like button. If you do like what you hear, it helps us to get these videos out to the sports card masses. Also, connect with me on IG at SportsCardDad, and I'm also on the Twitter, the SportsCardDad. All right, it is not breaking news that we are in some type of recession-style environment. I know it's not officially a recession yet. We haven't had 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth here in the United States to actually call it a recession, but man, does it kind of feel like one. And we have covered this extensively on the channel for months and months and months. My wife over the weekend was at Sam's Club, and they had completely ran out of meat. Now, what does this mean? This is one data point. Does this mean all the meat is gone? No. All I'm saying is just I don't remember a time where the grocery stores were completely out of this, that, or whatever. And granted, it was Father's Day weekend, so maybe people doing a lot of grilling, and it just so happened that they were running out of certain items. That could be the case, but also it just kind of feels like more of the norm. We're starting to hear about more of this type of stuff with, just the economy in general is just, it's slumping. You've got interest rates that are rising. People are fearful in general. Look at the crypto markets. They're way, way down. The crypto markets have not seen any sort of recession style event like this yet. And that was always kind of a question, and one that I thought was a good thing that was brought up in, Twitter and things like that is, crypto has not really seen any sort of pain in the economy. It's been kind of riding the highs of negative interest rates, low interest rates, and taking advantage. And now we'll see what it's made of. And frankly, it's struggling. It's struggling. Highly, highly speculative stuff. And that's what you're seeing. The highly speculative assets are getting hurt the most. On the sports card side, that's going to be the prospecting type stuff. We've seen that with a lot of the newer players, but not even just with the newer players. You also have vintage stuff that has gone down. I'm going to go over a couple of my pickups from the Raleigh show over the weekend. And here, we'll just go over one right here. This is the one I traded into. If you want the details of that trade, it's in my last video. It's a Johnny Unitas rookie card, 57 tops in a PSA 6. I have a 4 of this card that I bought at the National last year, so end of July 2021. I bought it for $700, and it's now sitting at $500. Now, granted, with vintage, the pricing can be kind of all over the place because it's all about eye appeal. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to cards in general, but definitely vintage cards because they all are slightly different, whether it be centering, whether it be coloring, etc. So vintage pricing, it's not as cut and dry as it was $700, now it's $500. There's a lot more to that story. But my point is that vintage pricing can drop as well. It doesn't mean that everything vintage is gone up. If we're looking at a longer time period, yes, okay, stuff is done well over time, sure. But I'm just making the point that over the last year, 12 months, 24 months, there's been some changes there. Added a couple more cards on Sunday. We went back to the show on Sunday as well. And these were just kind of fun cards that I felt were priced pretty well. A's baseball autos. So we've got Ricky Henderson down here. I think he's wildly underrated in general as just overall baseball goes. And granted, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some sort of baseball expert, but Ricky Henderson did a lot of stuff, accomplished a lot, and not really talked about in the same capacity as some of the other guys. So I really like Ricky Henderson. He's got a super clean auto. He has signed a lot of things, so it's not as if I'm expecting this to be like $1 million card, not at all. But this is kind of more of a premium tops product from 2017. And it's numbered out of 30, I believe, is this one. I just like the card. I like the gold framing. And with the McGuire, this one kind of just reminded me of the old days of McGuire. Not the Cardinals days, but the Bash brothers when he played for the A's. I'm not as crazy about the red ink auto, but I just really like the picture and how it all kind of comes together. These are both on card as well. I thought this one might be a sticker, but they're on card autos and kind of more of the premium product from Topps. This is the Diamond Icons version. It's numbered out of 25. So a couple of kind of fun pickups. They weren't crazy price points, so I felt pretty good about that. So the Raleigh show was busy, and I think the big question is just going to be how many transactions, and like I had said in the last video, there was a lot of ungraded cards there, which I thought it was just interesting because so many cards are being graded. And when you go to card shows, the vast majority of the stuff is graded unless maybe you're in dollar boxes or quarter bins or whatever it is. But this was literally like tables and tables and tables of ungraded stuff. And so that part was interesting. But the big thing that I'm really watching for, the thing that I'm thinking about, I guess, when I go to the Raleigh show, when I'm listening to people at the Midwest Monster talking about attendance and different, these shows, is just that there is definitely, to me, in my opinion, more people in the market, collectors, investors, flippers, whatever, in the market today than there was in 2018 and prior. Yes, we had this boom, and then we've had kind of this retracement back, but the thought is like, oh, all these people left the hobby. I don't know if they actually did, or if they did, then they've been replaced by other people, because frankly, there is just a lot more people, at least at shows. No one's really going to know how much is actually transacted at the shows, but I know that I was transacting. Flippin' Steve was with me, and he was as well. He'll have his own video to kind of talk about that. He has some really cool things to share there, but there was definitely certainly movement, and yes, there was some trading and different things, but people were buying. There was certainly people buying and interest. I think that's the main thing, is interest. You at least have people showing up to see where pricing is. It might not be where the dealers have their prices to where it's all selling, but people are at least interested enough to check it out. And I think that is good news as we move forward. And of course, the market will just kind of adjust. Again, if I'm comparing now to 2018, there's a lot more card content. A lot more card content. There's a lot more press around cards. There are large multi-$10 billion companies that are involved. eBay was already in the mix, but look at where eBay's come over the last few years, where this is not the same eBay as 2018. They've got a vault. They've got eBay Live. They've got all, authentication. They're recognizing like, okay, we need to kind of kick this thing into gear. And so eBay is really making moves. Fanatics is now in the game. And I think that's really kind of the X factor when it comes to the sports card hobby, because this is a company that's going to walk in with huge, deep pockets, and they are going to market this stuff. There will be marketing. Michael Rubin has said in many, many different interviews that the shocking part for him is that, the Topps and the Paninis of the world and the manufacturers, just the lack of overall marketing. And we remember, hey, you go back to the early 90s, I think I'll see if I can roll a film, but Fleer Ultra commercials.
Working overtime on the premiere of Fleer Ultra NBA basketball cards with tons of white-hot action, marbleized borders, 3D graphics.
There used to be marketing. There used to be TV commercials. There used to be this stuff, and now there really is not. So that's where I think there's going to be some massive changes as we move forward. But yes, the overall economy, recession, whatever, that is going to be battling against the demand that is there, and we will just have to see how it shakes out. Wax prices are an interesting topic as well. Now, it could just very well be that the companies have put out enough retail product to where the hobby boxes and stuff, the fact that there's not as much out there, maybe it's like, it doesn't really matter because there's enough retail product. Prism football is something, this is the first time in a while where I've seen a lot of people on Facebook groups and different places where they've got retail product to resell, because there's going to be a lot of it. Prism football is going to continue to roll out, but that is going to be, it's going to be fascinating to watch just to see how much of it they're rolling out, because a lot of times what happens is distributors, the Walmarts and the Targets and the distributors, all the distributors, they don't put out all their product at the same time, and they also don't ship out all that stuff. Meaning they don't reprint it, so they print it all up front, but it's all they put it out over time. They don't just put out all their product, and it's not like, oh, we're out of product and they're printing more. No, they just do it in waves. It's going to be interesting to see the waves and waves of, Top Series 1 baseball or Prism football, that sort of product, because you'll get a good idea of what's going on from a supply chain and supply, part. The one thing that's interesting, I guess, too, to think of if we're going back to junk wax era in the early 90s is, people always say there was always product on the shelf. There was always product there, but think about this as kind of an interesting side note to that. They didn't have the same sort of supply chain, the technology behind it to where Walmart, for example, they're the ones that really mastered this first. And that's the reason why we don't really have Kmart anymore. But instead of stuff just sitting on the shelves and not selling, because they don't want stuff sitting on the shelf that's not selling, they have it down pat to where they only have it enough on the shelf to sell. And then when it sells, the technology kicks in, bring in more. So was it just that, like, in our minds, it was just more inefficiency in the early 90s when people compare it and they're like, oh no, they had just truckloads and truckloads of that stuff back then and it was always available. But was it just inefficiencies, a perception that it was always just sitting there, because when really there is a lot of this product now. It's just waiting to come to the shelf. It's just in wait. And then, of course, the other big difference is that all of this new product has got numbered cards, serial cards, parallels, all the stuff, whereas in 1992, you just had like a bunch of the same thing that was coming out. So it's a totally different world, but I just thought that was kind of an interesting thought. But hobby boxes and wax, a lot of it is driven by breakers. They need product to break. And there's a lot of big companies that break, but then there's also kind of smaller companies that do it as well. And so again, that's going to keep prices up on that stuff because breakers are going to need product. And so wax is not caught up with singles prices going down. And again, guys, if we're talking about like high-end type stuff, this doesn't really apply. Those prices haven't really gone down as much. There are high-end stuff that has come down, but the word high-end sports cards, that phrase has really been taken like to another, like what is high end? There's all sorts of levels of high end. There's all sorts of levels of middle tier or whatever. In my opinion, there's a lot of cards that are considered high end that really shouldn't be, that they will end up coming back down into that middle end. And I think that we're starting to see that a lot now. You're starting to see a lot of comparisons to stuff on IG, through alt or, even on eBay or through auction sites to where a lot of high-end cards have come way down in price. Are there still records being set for certain cards? Yeah, but there's more high-end cards that have come down that I'm seeing than the ones that have gone up or continue to go up. And we haven't really seen the full effect of recession yet, if we are entering into a true full-blown recession. It certainly feels like one, but we have to kind of see how that plays out and what it's going to mean for pricing for everything. Food, gas, rent are really the things to watch. Now you've got interest rates going up for mortgages as well. You have to think about that too. I saw something like the 30-year fixed is now up to, it's in the sixes now, 6.1 to 6.5%. A year ago, we're at like 2.5%, 3% on a 30-year fixed mortgage. That's a massive difference when you go to take out a mortgage and your payment. When your payment is at 3%, you can afford a lot more house. At 6%, it is a drastic difference. When you run those numbers, it's big. And so the thought is that is really what's going to start bringing housing prices back down, is just that once you have higher rates, nobody can afford the stuff. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, people are still buying houses. They're going to really test that. Whole separate topic there. Do you think that cards are going to overcorrect where there's going to be some bargains? People are saying that there's a lot of buying opportunities right now. I hear a lot of like, it's still correcting. The reality is, and again, nobody knows where the bottom lies. The bottom could be now. It could be in 6 months. It could be in 12, could be in 3 years. We just don't know. The one thing that I think of though, when people are talking about like everything's going to zero, you have to remember that they're going to raise interest rates, but they can't do it the way they did in the 1970s because of our national debt. When they raise rates, they're also raising rates on our debt, that we have to then pay back interest. So when our GDP is going to just paying debt, then it's just being thrown away. It's a brutal cycle. And so they can't do what they did in the 1970s. We will always be living in some sort of inflationary world. We just don't know what levels that will be. That's the thing to really kind of pay attention to and watch. And so, if the thought is that the mortgage rates are going to be up at 18% like they were in 1980, I just don't see how it can't happen because it's going to bankrupt our country. I don't see them doing that. I just don't believe it's going to happen like that. So what do you guys think? Is this thing going to overcorrect where cards are actually probably lower than they should be? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.